Now that's significant. The Market Research Podcast.
Hi everyone, thanks for joining us on this latest episode of Now That's Significant, a market research podcast. This is your host, Michael Howard, the Head of Marketing at InfoTools. Today we're joined by Kayte Hamilton, founder of The Social Question, a new research agency that offers fresh perspective on social media research. Specifically, their methodology includes partnering with Instagram influencers to act as question hosts with their followers. Kayte is a true millennial in that she has grown up with technology and entered the social media world as a college student, what was then a Facebook rite of passage, and had this crossover idea back in 2017. In addition to her marketing research responsibilities, Kayte has also started offering her overall marketing and social expertise, serving as an adjunct instructor at her alma mater of Old Dominion University and as a social selling course coach with Little Bird Marketing. Thanks for joining us on the show today, Kayte.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. So, Kayte, what's the most significant thing you're going to tell us today, which we'll unpack throughout the episode?
Honestly, I think the thing that's most shocking to me, that would be the most significant, is that influencers can be the perfect research moderator. It's honestly shocking to me the parallels that exist between influencers and their community engagement and the qualitative research needs that we have in the MR community.
I'm looking forward to hearing more about this. So can you tell us about how influencers can be leveraged for the market research industry?
Absolutely. So social media research has traditionally been a really narrow scope to our research designs and almost exclusively existing in the quantitative space. As a social media participant myself, I've witnessed influencers that I follow on Instagram cultivate true communities on specific topics with hundreds to thousands of virtual strangers across the world. And I try to do those same things for clients all the time when we create ad hoc communities or long-term communities. The thing is, they just don't call themselves moderators. If we were to change up the vocabulary terms, influencers are the exact type of research hosts that we're looking for when we do create those client-led communities. They're just doing it naturally on social media. You know, they're asking on-topic questions relevant to the content strategy that they've created. They probe deeper on some responses. Their notifications remind you to participate. They are opted-in followers. I mean, I could keep going, but how an influencer engages their followers, specifically on Instagram, is so closely associated with what we do in our own online communities.
Yes, nice. So this didn't happen overnight, did it? Influencers have been around for more than a decade. I guess the way that we think of what a social media influencer is. So why hasn't the research community noticed this before?
Great question. That's something that I ask myself all the time, and why I didn't start my company in 2017 and why I waited until 2022 to launch. My business model and methodology is designed exclusively for Instagram. And I think what we have seen is before 2017, influencers didn't have the same type of engagement strategies or engagement options that Instagram has since implemented. So as the Instagram stories, that 24-hour cycle of engagement created and manifested, there are three different main strategies that can be used. You can do a Q&A response box, you can do a poll, you can do a quiz. But before 2017, that didn't exist. So the times that we saw social media research coming into play, I'll talk about, I think, a little bit later in the episode, has to do with social media intelligence and social listening and looking for public comments on posts versus Instagram stories or private conversations. Those are things that are not ever going to be leveraged in social media intelligence or social media listening tools. So until Instagram kind of manifested these new tools and engagement, there really wasn't much that influencers could have done with this to begin with, short of sharing an online survey with a swipe up or a link to, again, related back to that story's engagement. So when I saw those new engagement things roll out 5 years ago, I was paying steady attention, waiting for that natural migration to move over and create the hashtag influencer marketing research to piggyback on hashtag influencer marketing. And it wasn't happening, so I took the gamble in 2022 to really put more emphasis on these new relationships, on these new partnerships. And what I'm hearing and what I'm learning from influencers is they're ready for it. We mentioned a decade already. We mentioned 10 years for how long we've traditionally thought of like the present day model of an influencer. There's only so many things they can sell. There's only so many things in, reels and videos and creative energy that they can expel, but it's really doing the same things over and over again. They're looking for new monetization strategies. They're looking for new ways to engage with their participants. And the marketing research industry is really primed to give them that something new, educate them on a whole new industry, and open the doors to a whole new world that still technically exists within the marketing ecosystem itself. And there's so much potential here.
Yes, some people might not be as familiar with these tools as you are. Can you tell us a bit more about, say, the question stickers?
Yeah, that's fair. And I am a true millennial. So I'll back up a little bit and talk about those Instagram engagement features specifically. So in Stories is a 24-hour engagement tool. Influencers will go on, share videos, share news stories, share marketing content, but they only exist in that 24-hour cycle and then they reset. There's 3 different stickers. So Instagram calls them stickers when you add something to your story. One of them is a Q&A box, and it basically, an influencer writes a prompt or a question or a statement, whatever it is, and then a new box comes up and you can physically type into the response. This is completely different than a direct message. So if you direct message an influencer, that kind of goes into an email inbox situation within the platform. Or if you make a comment on a post, that becomes public because most influencers' accounts are public. And it's part of like the news feed engagement. The stories box goes into a whole separate area of Instagram. So unlocking that potential so it doesn't get lost in DMs and doesn't get lost in comment feed posts is a new communication strategy. The other 2 stickers are polls and quizzes. Luckily, they named those very self-explanatory. So a poll is something that you can relate similar to like a multiple choice question like you would in an online survey. Polls and quizzes only have 4 answer choices available right now. They don't go to a 5th option, but you don't have to offer more than 2 either. So you can do 2, 3, or 4 answer options on them. And so a poll is just going to take collected tally, collect the total number of votes or input that the followers gave. And the followers gave. The influencer is going to be able to see the total number of people who voted and the percent of votes. So that's information that we can ask the influencer to share back with us. And then a quiz, also good word choice. It indicates that there's a right answer to the question that's being posted. So again, you can offer anywhere between 2 and 4 answer choices, but you'll have to indicate that there is a quote right answer. And what's really fascinating about this idea of polls and quizzes, the current iterations that I just spoke about are still fairly new. Both of those have gone through a couple of iterations the last 5 years, but those 2 right now are pretty stable with what I just described. Influencers naturally figured out how to add a don't know option, which how often do we still have to think about that in our industry, right? Or like we're writing a survey, like, are all those answer options like really everything that could be considered? So they're really creative with it though. So because when you participate in a poll or a quiz, you do see a little bit of the other followers' participations on them. So I'll give you an example of a poll. Do you prefer cats, dogs, fish? And then they might have the 4th answer options like, I'm just here for the results. Like, I don't know. I don't want to commit to one of those answer choices, but I still want to engage and I still want to participate. So influencers figured that out. People wanted to answer with something, but they didn't have the right answer there that they could connect with. So they figured out how to, still do something. We do that in marketing research every single day with our own surveys that we make. And so, they've really kind of self-learned, self-evolved into being mini researchers within their platforms.
Well, a thing or two we can learn. So these tools you've mentioned, how can market researchers leverage them?
Yeah, so the question box is really where my bread and butter is with the social question. That's the one where there's a Q&A response box. It's essentially an open-end survey prompt that you're getting back. There are some character count limitations on there, so you're not going to get 2 paragraphs of text back, but you can participate more than once during that 24-hour cycle. So if somebody has a longer story, we've seen followers figure out how to add to a longer story by numbering their responses. So they might say, a handful of their response and then end it with a 1, and then do another response, end it with a 2, do another response and end it with a 3, so that the influencer can kind of put that full response story together. So in research, we're used to asking a lot more than one question, right? And that's another strategic reason to me naming my company The Social Question and not Social Questions, right? It's not plural, it's a singular. We want to engage with the followers in-app on platform as part of #paid partnerships instead of directly linking them to an outside survey. So we still can do that. We can still, promote a screener or a recruit criteria or a panel sign up or a full-on quant study. But you want to do that priming and in-app experience first with the influencer on topic. So doing that with the Q&A box versus a poll or a quiz, get somebody actually thinking, getting somebody more engaged in that participation on the platform and talking with the influencer that they wanted to have entertainment with. Now, I'm going to let you in on a little bit of a secret. Another reason why I think marketing research as an industry has not really capitalized on the influencer momentum is because I mentioned those Q&A response boxes go to a third section of Instagram, right? We have direct messages and we have comments on feed posts. Those are pretty accessible, but the responses disappear. It's shocking. It's revolting, actually, not just shocking. It makes me literally sick to my stomach knowing that millions of people's feedback of conversations, really passionate responses have just gone into a black void of Instagram if they're not actualized in a certain amount of time. Instagram doesn't allow you to download the data. When you get to that Q&A response box point of view, it's actually showing up in a 2-column point of view for the influencer. Influencers physically cannot get through thousands of responses in 24 hours. I mean, it's just not logistically possible. So what I spent last summer doing as part of my launch of The Social Question is actually creating a piece of technology to download that data. At the end of the day, Meta and Instagram are going to blow that technology out of the water one day as soon as they allow a little widget to just download that information, but it's not on their radar. Every time the head of Instagram comes onto the platform and does an AMA, it's one of the first questions that I write. When can we start downloading stories responses? When can we start tapping into this data offline? But their main competitor right now is TikTok and video content and entertainment, and thinking more in the advertising and marketing space and not even realizing the potential that the MR community can bring and elevate to the platform. So that's another reason why I think the MR community has been so slow to adopt, because we didn't know how to use the data. We didn't know how to access it. And to be frank, now we do. Now there is a short way to get that information so that we can code it. We can look for the stories. We can look for the research patterns, and all of the traditional analysis can now happen offline because of the tool that I created.
Well done. Nice work. So one of the key questions I've heard you get all the time relates to data quality. How do you validate the followers who are participating in these question boxes?
Yeah, so not only one of the key questions that I get all the time, but probably the number one question that I would say that I get. And my answer is not popular, and I think it can kind of be shared in 2 parts. The first part is I'm not screening the followers. which is very rare for a marketing research study, right? We have, I think, very overcomplicated ourselves when it comes to research executions with 20 to 30 question screening qualifiers and lots of skip logic in our surveys and trying to create like complex conversations in an online form. And we really need to simplify it way back. And that's what the social question is doing. I'm partnering with an influencer that essentially fits your target audience. So I have some examples for you. Let's say you're trying to recruit men and women who have been exposed to HIV or have HIV or are recently diagnosed with HIV, right? You might have all those different like subsegments that you need to fill in your recruit criteria. And I really hate it when people say, and I know that I've been guilty of this as well, so I don't mean to say that I'm a saint in this, but we tend to say that some audiences are, quote, hard to find. I really blow smoke on that. I don't think anybody's hard to find. I don't think that we're engaging them in the right opportunities to want to discuss things with us. So making somebody, quote, hard to find or pegging somebody as, quote, hard to find really objectifies somebody and doesn't treat them like a human. It doesn't treat them like a person. Or we're trying to recreate the wheel. There's an HIV influencer advocate on Instagram right now. There's actually dozens of them. I have been recruiting them for a project where they've already created those communities and safe spaces on that topic. So the people who are going to follow an HIV advocate are somebody who's been exposed to HIV, recently diagnosed with HIV, or is living with HIV, right? Like those pools of people already exist. We just need to be more creative with how we engage with them. So while the influencer fits those specs, we know that the followers, just kind of like by degrees of separation, or it's probably not the right analogy, but you get what I mean. There's a wide net that the followers are going to encompass a very similar profile to the influencer in these situations. Another example that might be a little bit easier to process might be pet parents who feed their dogs raw dog food. Okay, well, influencers are promoting raw dog food diets across the board with lots of different brands. So let's find an influencer who has been promoting a raw food diet. They'll already know their sales metrics for anytime they're using that as a brand partnership, how many click-through rates or how many purchases their followers have made in that situation. So it's not unusual for this influencer to then ask a question about raw dog food because they've already opened that door and opened those conversations. People also really want to participate. So making it as simple as possible, kind of breaking down those qualifying barriers, means that you're going to get higher quality responses. So let's go back to the raw dog food example. Just because an influencer talks about raw dog food doesn't mean 100% of their followers do. So start the partnership, start the hashtag paid partnership with a poll. Say, how many of you are currently feeding your dog raw food? Yes, no, move on. Okay, if you said yes, answer this Q&A box. And then if you said no, I'm going to post a different one for you. People inherently want to follow instructions. Like, I don't think everybody exists in life to want to be a rebel. Like, we want to assimilate. We want to do the right thing. So first ask the question, yes, no. You'll get that poll, that tally of how many people said yes, how many people said no. And then you can filter them still in app, still on platform. It's kind of an honesty component. But like I said, people want to participate. You just need to let them participate in the way that makes the most sense. The second part of my response in terms of the quality is also soft and not popular, because I'm not validating the follower accounts. So when I go to download those stories responses, while I technically do see, or we can technically tap into those usernames, I'm not looking at the metadata of those usernames, and I don't have any special software that is, aligning that those usernames are not bots. And the reason for that, one, is it's kind of a waste of time if you trust the influencer and their follower base. But the other real reason for it is Instagram stories are kind of like a closed loop circuit. So it's much different than a comment box or, again, a DM. where bots can flood both of those things. But in order to even get to that story's engagement, you have to go to the influencer's profile, click on their story, click through the story, and then decide to opt in on that specific engagement. Bots just aren't that sophisticated to get through all of those hoops to actually participate. We do know there are some bots in story views, but we don't see them in stories engagements. And the other thing that I also find shocking compared to all the quant studies that I have done, and even related to the qualitative studies I've done, how often have you had to toss quantitative data because of gibberish open-end responses, or somebody didn't answer the question the right way, or they clearly weren't engaged with the content? Every time I've partnered with an influencer, I have had to toss 0% of those stories responses, because it's an authentic relationship that's existed for years, most of the time for years, even if it's a shorter amount of time in terms of weeks or months, between the influencer and the follower. You don't see the bad data responses that you do in the larger quantitative issues if you're thinking of this as an open-end response.
Well, so just on that, has this changed the type of influencer that you engage with? Is there a bit of a screening process with that, for instance?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So when I'm looking for an influencer to partner with, I'm not just looking at those target audience specs, right? I'm not just looking for an influencer who's promoted raw dog food or feeds their dog raw dog food. I'm also looking at their own organic moderating experience. So it's completely possible to have a follower base count of, let's say, 200,000 followers, but you never converse with them. Like the type of content, the type of relationship you have might be purely sales. And so they're coming to you for deals. They're coming to you for links to products, but they don't really care about a relationship. Or they're some kind of artist, right? Where maybe they make a lot of feed posts and they make a lot of shareable content. So people are following them for advice, or they're following them for, something that they can reshare to their community, but they don't have dialogue. It's a loose metric. I'm still working on the scientific part behind it, but there are variables in terms of, okay, I kind of stalk the influencer, to be completely transparent, right? Okay, they kind of fit these specs. I'm going to go ahead and follow them myself and see how often they're on stories, how often they're on camera, how often they're already using those types of stickers. Not only they're using the stickers, but are they boomeranging those conversations back around? Because anytime that is naturally occurring, that just means our response rates are going to be boosted that much more. So another common question kind of related to what you just asked me is how do we figure out the return on investment for this research project, right? When you do a focus group or you do a quant study, there's a minimum number of completes that you're looking for. The likelihood of us partnering with an influencer that already has dialogue as part of their content strategy means that we're going to have a higher percent of people answering these prompts than somebody with 200,000 followers who never engages. I've literally partnered with somebody, let's see, I think they had 60 or 70,000 followers. 4 people responded.
Wow.
Because it's not part of the regular engagement. It was not part of the expected programming to come in. The other thing that we have to consider is this is new. It's not just new for MR, it's new for influencers and it's new for followers. So introducing a paid partnership to these otherwise more privatized Q&A response boxes is going to naturally lower a little bit of that inclined response rate, but I don't expect that to last forever. I think if we can prove that we're trustworthy with their data, that we're using their responses in confidence, which I anonymize those usernames before I send them back to the client from a raw data perspective. If we can promote that trust and authenticity, net dip in presenting a hashtag paid partnership in this situation should really be minimal in terms of those engagement rates.
Sure. Thank you for that. So I want to now just to wrap up, to circle back to the topic that we're titling this episode, the social media research part. While the service is new, are there any other forms of social media research out there?
Yeah, so I think I mentioned earlier that we have social media intelligence or social intelligence, we have social listening. But like I said before, those are both quantitative, and this is really a new qualitative component. And honestly, it's a hybrid between qual and quant. We're getting open-end stories, but potentially at scale with hundreds of thousands of responses in 24 hours to weed through. AI is also a big conversation in this space, both with social intelligence as well as with what I'm doing, because trying to analyze thousands of open-end responses on a short turnaround time point is tough. There's definitely some AI analytic tools that I will eventually be bringing in. I have a couple of clients and potential clients who have their own text analyzers that are going to play a part in some of that analysis. But regardless, most, if not all, I'm always hesitant to use extremes, social intelligence is going to be passive and public. And the social question methodology is private and active. And that's really the most junior way that I can explain the difference. It's not that one is better than the other. I can see the social question being an amazing counterpart to any social intelligence initiatives that clients or researchers are doing, because when you're reviewing those dashboards, when you're looking at all of that metadata on the social intelligence element, you're probably going to be left with a question or two of what does this all really mean? And we can use an influencer to bring that story to life. So you can have a little bit of that quant and qual together to be a little bit more impactful with that overall research story. And like I said before, influencers are really open to change. They're open to offering new things. I don't think I shared with this yet in our interview today for this episode, but influencer marketing is really skewed, right? Like if you think about it, influencers are asking their followers to spend money and to support their lifestyle. Every time they share a link, I want you to open your wallet and buy something from me. And when you buy something from me, I get credit for it. You don't. You get stuff,
Yeah.
but I get paid. I'm the one who's actually benefiting from it. Versus, I know we try not to talk too much about the incentive and honorariums and paying people for their opinions and feedback and marketing research. But anytime there's a social question collaboration, I'm doing cash giveaways with the followers. So we're doing a traditional sweepstakes. So I just want you to answer this question, and then you'll be entered into a $50 cash drawing or $100 cash drawing. And so it's a way to promote those engagement rates. It's a way to get to know followers better without asking them to spend money. In fact, they get the cash benefit back at the end of the engagement. I pay out those incentives within 24 to 48 hours of the project closing to keep up with transparency. And everybody who's won has been so thankful. And like, oh my gosh, I never win anything. Like, I didn't think I had a chance on that. Like, yeah, all you had to do was participate. Like, thanks so much, like, for joining the conversation. We really appreciate it. And then that's one more person, as elementary as it sounds, it's one more person who's now open to marketing research, who has a new experience with marketing research, who may just be interested in joining a panel because they had a really nice, easy in-platform experience that wasn't daunting, wasn't asking too much of them.
So our conversation today sounds like it's all about making market research more human, which has been quite a hot topic over the last year or so.
Yeah, I think recognizing that conversations already exist out of our marketing research bubble really puts this type of creative research process in a new light. I think we get so tunneled vision on finding like nitty gritty specific consumers and customers that like our blinders are completely on with like what else is going on in their life, or like what other things are they doing. Like they don't exist to exclusively check their email waiting for an email survey invite. They don't. They have lots of other things going on. So Melanie from the Insights Association said on a panel this past summer that we know, and this has been, I think, like widely reported on, that Gen Z doesn't want to be researched. they've had bad experiences with it. They don't feel like it's collaborative and like they're part of the actual process. We have to find new ways to get to them. We have to find new ways to embrace them and bring them into the conversation. So that means we literally need to go to where they are. If they're not coming to us, we need to go to them. And I think that helps with like the humanizing context, because we have to like think about how we meet people. We have to think about how we introduce ourselves and position ourselves and have legitimate conversations. There's probably parallels in there between online dating and marketing research and participants. Somewhere in there, there's probably an analogy.
For sure. So if I can recap what we've talked about today, it's how influencers can evolve their value to organizations, and how they're perfectly placed to become research moderators on social media. So particularly using the question stickers and the question boxes, which I liked how you put it there, that they are private and active participants, which is really fascinating and interesting. So we looked at those engagement tools available to influencers on Instagram. Kate shared how influencers can be hired to host questions to their followers and communities, and how you really targeted those active, engaged influencers as well, and how that can dramatically increase the response rates that you're getting with your communities. We also looked at the differences between the other social media research options as well, compared to the service that you at The Social Question offer. So I think there's a little bit more in there, but I'm pretty sure that covers the main parts, right, Kate? Was there anything else you wanted to mention?
I mean, I could keep going for the next 2 hours if you really wanted to continue the episode, but I think for now that covers it. If you're wanting to chat more, if you want to learn more, I'm always open to an introduction call. You can find me on LinkedIn. You can send me a DM. You can find me on Instagram. I'm also going to be at several marketing research shows this conference circuit. So I'll be at QRCA in Charlotte this March. I will be at Quirk Chicago this March. I'm looking at the Insights Association. I'm looking at Greenbook. That's just the first half of the year. I think this past year I went to something like 12 shows in 2022. So depending on when this episode airs, I realize those dates might not matter, but you can probably find me somewhere in person. If not, I'm just a phone call away.
Nice. It's great to have those events back on our regular calendar, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. A big thanks for joining us on the episode today, Kate.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. And thank you too for those who've listened in today. If you have liked what you've heard, feel free to reach out to Kate at The Social Question. I'm sure you'll be able to find her on Instagram, but through the normal channels as well. Feel free to subscribe to the podcast, share it with others, and even leave a review on your platform. So thanks for listening to Now That's Significant.